Try this in a small town panel at the Dragon Spirituality Summit 2023. Thank you for being here. And thank you all for being here.
Yeah.
I started talking first, like I'm moderating, but I'm not. But I'll start. I'll just introduce
Say
myself.
that, Louise.
Yeah. My name is Kylie Je, Miss Kylie Je. I'm from Pocatello, Idaho, which is a small town comparative to San Francisco. I always get a little like, I don't know, my feelings get a little bit hurt when people from bigger towns are like, oh, that must be just like a little hamlet. I'm like, you know, I know smaller towns. I have driven through Idaho and seen about 15, so they just kind of just drive by. But yeah, so I'm for further context, I'm an Episcopalian, an Anglican. I don't represent anything from the Episcopal Church, but I certainly am here representing myself.
Good morning or good afternoon or wherever you're joining us from. We're drag queens, so it's sometime in our heads. You know, we're always late. I'm Kylie Minono, and I grew up in Nampa, Idaho. Have been living in San Francisco for years. And about me, I'm a new minister with the Church of Fabulosity, which is a new religious organization that basically supports anybody being their authentic, fabulous selves, however that means to you, whether it's drag or nail polish or both. Just being you and your fabulous self is what we believe. I am also been sober for 8.5 years and found a lot of spirituality in that world that I bring into my daily life. And then I do a lot of fundraising here in the city with the Grand Ducal Council of San Francisco. So yay! And I'm single.
Hi everyone, I'm Linda Summers. I am not from Idaho, but
Potato at it.
I prefer tomatoes. It'll give me a new blush color. Anyway, I'm from California. I grew up in San Rafael, which is I think a town. We're gonna call it a town. It's definitely away from the city. It's away from San Francisco, and I definitely did not find God until I was 20. I had no interest, but there was a point in my life where I was just like, where can I find community? Where can I practice spirituality? And I found this group of disciples of Christ. It was a non-denominational Christian group, and I did it for a whole year. And it was amazing. It was an amazing journey, to say the least. But the one thing that I feel like was not like fitting in my ideal way of wanting to live my life was the fact that I had to give up my gay card, and that was a struggle. But I'm glad that I'm here now, and I'm glad that today the sun is out. So yeah, we're really happy to be here.
Thank you for keeping started business. You bring up, you were talking about religion as well, and I think that's a good place, I think, to start off with, especially growing up in towns in Idaho and San Rafael. For us to share a little bit about our own relationship with God and spirituality. And I think, for me, growing up in Nampa, Idaho, I learned very quickly that at least there, church was not for me. And then when I moved here, I found that there's so much good faith community that to me, a lot of the churches in the city here represent what faith is all about, which is about the love and is about community. I will say for me, I'm not, don't smite me, I'm not a God person myself, but I do believe in higher power, and that for me is love, which I think ties in so much to what the drag community is all about. And I'll turn it over to whoever wants to jump in.
Yeah, I grew up Baptist. I grew up in a white Southern Baptist congregation in Meridian, and I didn't know anything else. The thing about Baptists is that I don't know if you know this. I mean, do you know this? Baptists are the most correct. And
right.
that's correct. Yeah, isn't it? And I remember I remember being in a youth group or like a Sunday school where we talked about exactly how much more correct Baptists were than every single specific sect that was very popular in Southern Idaho. And so that's what I came up with. And when I realized I was not fitting in with my church anymore because I was gay, and it should be mentioned, sheltering even that fact from myself, it became difficult to know where I did fit in. I think I could say that I found a lot of solace in theater, and drag didn't come till much later when I was in college, but and same in college, I having that separation from like where I grew up in that small town to it's just kind of like an adjacent small town in Idaho. Just the distance gave me the permission to start what I would probably call a reconciliation phase, where I was like, I was not one of those people who just kind of like rejected the religion that I grew up with. I felt like I needed to understand myself within the context of it before I could move on to something else. So I read a book called God and the Gay Christian, which I can't remember Matthew Vines, thank you. And that was helpful. There's a lot of similar texts that are trying to revoke kind of the teachings of evangelical denominations. And I think specifically trying to do it within a context of the scripture. And now I'm not going to get into any of that because I just kind of don't think that it's necessary. I don't think that I need to try and find myself into a scripture that is in some ways rigid, because there's so much more of it that's so expansive and inclusive. So that's how I found my way into Episcopalianism, is because people invited me, and I have felt welcome ever since.
That's the one with the fish, right?
It's called pescatarian.
Oh. Thank you. It's educational.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I think in San Rafael, there's only two different kind of practices that you can follow, right? There's Christianity or Catholicism. I feel like there wasn't like other forms of practice that you could have tried to pursue. And so I feel like for me, like it was important for me to follow something that was more of a minority, because being brown and queer in a town where it was mostly white, I had to just sort of follow what I thought was my place. And I thought that was Christianity, because again, Catholicism ruled over Christianity, just as whites rule over, people of color. So I feel like that's why I think I found it easier just to say yes to Christianity when the opportunity came up. It was like, okay, this is what I have to do. Not knowing that, I could have had a different take to it or whatever, but yeah. I don't know what else.
Girl needs options.
Yeah, girl needs options. That's right. Need a whole buffet.
So you both talked a little bit about what your spiritual practice looks like. Can you expand on that at all? I guess I can start to. So right now I'm finding a lot more roles in my church. I got trained to be a worship leader, so we can do the rite that's called morning prayer. I can lead that now. And I help out with several different committees, and a lot of it for me is just making sure that I'm, having a seat at the table and creating the spaces that I felt like I needed when I was younger, especially in a religious context. I guess that's all I want to say about that. What do you do in the Church of Fabulosity?
So yeah, the Church of Fabulosity, we are non-denominational, and we don't have, set worship spaces. So it's all, for us, it's wherever we are giving ministry. And part of that is also, that our drag shows are ministering to the public, right? And so that to me, I joined this, it's a new organization, and I joined it recently because it really aligned with my own personal values and spirituality. And I think just being present, fully present in the moment, I say with my iPhone on the table, and just showing up to places and spreading love and joy and fabulosity. You never know when and how that is going to affect somebody's life. I ran into somebody a couple of years ago who I had met at a previous San Francisco Pride. And, at Pride festivals, we're all busy. We're trying to get where we're going and do our things. And this young person stopped me and just was chatting for a minute, asked for a hug. I gave them a hug, took a picture with them. And, in my mind, boop, I'm just on with my day. And when she found me, and now later, she mentioned that, she's transgender. She was going through a horrible time. She was thinking about committing suicide, and that little interaction helped give her the love that she needed in that moment to keep going. And it just blows my mind that even in areas like the Bay Area, which we think we're in such a bubble here, and we think that everything is so wonderful, there's still people that are just in pain. And so I think for me, it's how can I add some joy to the lives of anybody I'm interacting with, whether they're just checking out my groceries, hi, how are you? How's your day going? And the more I do this, the more I learn, there's so many people that just get ignored or aren't seen, and just little acts of kindness can really make the difference to somebody. And so I feel like that to me is God's work. And that's what I try to do.
Beautiful. That's beautiful, Kylie. Yeah, I think I was one of them. No, I'm kidding.
This is my drag niece, by the way. She's a terrible, rotten person.
No, I think as far as like your question goes, like how do I practice or what do I do now? I mean, as I mentioned, like I was a disciple of Christ for a whole year. And for me, like that meant giving up my gay card. But at some point I realized that just because I was living with HIV now did not mean that I couldn't have a relationship with God, or that I had to have a relationship with God or that I can only have this relationship with God if I follow these people. And I realized like that's not what I have to do. Like my relationship with God is unique to me, and he caters to my needs. So I feel like I had to really step away from it. And luckily I found sobriety as well, right? Where I think we practiced a lot of what I think I was taught in that year of discipleship, which is to be a mentor of some sort, right? Open up a book with someone and just share thoughts and feelings and experiences with one another, right? And just being supportive and being loving. And I feel like I do that a lot, I think, in sobriety today, even though I'm away from that group, I still feel like I am a disciple of some sort of, a faith believer, right? And just someone who's, trying to, make it work, like we all are, really. Yeah.
So I have a question. So I still live in a small town, not the one I grew up in, but one in Idaho. Both of you left. I guess I'd like to ask you guys why you left, and also I can talk a little bit about why I stayed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're Belle.
Yeah.
Why? For me, it's interesting because I have very progressive parents, and I knew that they were such growing up, and both of them had past lives before I was born in which they worked with, members of the LGBTQ community and were allies. But when I grew up in Idaho, I had no context of this. They didn't share this with me, and certainly did not have any connection to community growing up there. I had family in San Francisco, my aunt who still lives here. And so I knew, having visited, like, oh my God, they have the gay part of town. And so for me, it was just, I needed to come here, land somewhere that I felt I could start exploring who I am, and then found a rent-controlled apartment and haven't left. So, for me, it was like I need to explore myself so that I can be my authentic self and try to be happy. I still have family that live in Idaho, so I still go back and visit sometimes. And they have the Imperial Court coronation.
Oh, I've heard about the Imperial Court in Boise.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
We'll talk offline. But so I still go back and I do bring drag with me, and I do feel like it's important. When I go, I even as my, out of drag, I wear very queer clothing, lots of unicorns, lots of colors, lots of, and I love that, just to be again that visible presence of like, hey, we exist and we are here, and we were the only ones wearing masks during COVID in Idaho. So that's for me why I left. Did I answer the question?
I think so. Yeah, you were trying to kind of like what I said earlier, just finding that space away from where you
all of the above.
Yeah.
You crossed a bridge, girl.
I did have to cross the bridge. No, but I think my answer to your question is, there were not enough men to let me couch surf in San Rafael. So I had to come to San Francisco, where I found opportunities to find housing out here, because I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with a family of 5. So it's kind of like sharing that space, that living room, that 1 bedroom with 4 other people, right? And so I feel like I could have maybe gotten a job and maybe tried to find my own place in San Rafael, but it just wasn't aligned with, I guess, with what God intended. It was for me to come end up here and use all of you. So yeah, nothing kidding.
Hey, now you have a partner. We're single. So if anybody watching lives in Idaho, I have a question, and I don't really know how to phrase it nice and neat, but in our conversation so far, I'm hearing a lot of sort of interwoven threads around struggles in our community, or struggles being accepted in our community around HIV. I'm HIV positive as well. Spirituality, and also doing drag. And so I'm curious for both of you to share some of your experiences with those threads.
There's no drag in San Rafael at all up until today. No drag at all, which is weird. I feel like we're not too far. Come on, Oakland has drag shows, Alameda has drag shows, Pleasanton has drag shows. San Rafael doesn't. Novato doesn't have anything. Nobody doesn't have anything. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's interesting to just kind of see that happening. I don't know why they haven't progressed, or why they haven't created spaces. I don't know why I just had to share this today, but what was
We're gonna start a drag show in San Rafael. That's why.
No, but that's one of my intents, I think, in the future, is to bring something up there, because I feel like there's a lot of fabulous people out there that are living, ready to come out, right? And I just felt like it's important to create spaces. And I feel like that's the reason why I left San Rafael, is because I felt like there was no space for me where I can find my creativity. And I feel like if I had the chance, I would probably go back to San Rafael just to do that, just to start something, to be honest. And as far as HIV and all of that stuff, I feel like when I was told that I was HIV positive, the woman who told me, she first gave me the news, and then she was like, "I'm just kidding," and I was just like, "Oh, okay." And then she was like, "No, actually, it's real." Right? Because she hadn't told anyone for 10 years. You know what I mean? And that's crazy. You know what I mean? And I just remember feeling like, okay, I definitely need to get out of here. There's no way that I can stay here, and feel like I'm ever gonna find some light, and I don't know. I think it's an interesting.
I think and part of the reason that I bring it up is that I know, for me in the gay community, I know, having HIV, which I think is starting to change a little bit, but there's this huge stigma around it. And I found in dating that there's also a huge stigma around drag, and there's also a huge stigma around being religious or spiritual. And so
about that.
I had somebody once that was okay with me being HIV positive, but they could not handle the fact that I do drag. And I'm like, I'm not sexual in drag, right? But I'm like, okay, you get luck dating anybody on Broadway.
It's interesting because I grew up in the Boise area. I claim Eagle tentatively, not tentatively. I claim Eagle, Idaho, but
It's a real place.
it is a real place. But in the Treasure Valley area, and I think that like if we're gonna like scale it on like a level of like more liberal to like more conservative, I would say that Pocatello kind of falls in the more liberal, but I don't think that that's like a good indicator of like if it's an accepting place for queer people or.
It's on an Idaho
drag.
scale.
Yeah, this is an Idaho scale. This is the top 10 places you might not get called bad word. So I actually moved away from like the bigger city in order to go to school there. And I left for a little bit and then I came back because, excuse me, I wanted to. I just felt like that was home for me. I just felt like that was the place where all my friends were, and I felt like that was a place that I could find myself and make an impact. And you were talking a little bit about, this tension between, all of these different threads and all the intersections. I'm HIV negative, but I understand like the politics that goes into that. We lost our HIV prevention program a couple years back, and just seeing how people have tried to fill in the gaps to make sure that those structures are still there, and we're still having conversations about safe sex and consent. That's been a difficult thing. I think most recently, I think the thing that's weighing on my heart is just this intersection of drag and religion. In my neck of the woods, things kind of turned into a tizzy in October of last year, so a year ago, when the Idaho GOP, it wasn't them, it was a political action group that announced that they were going to put forward some legislation banning drag in Idaho. And so immediately, like a bunch of people got into action and started working on that. And just because of all the conversations that were happening and all this awareness around drag and what it was doing, like its place in our community, I know that there was a hate group that took up residence in Pocatello. And so I actually I'm the president of an organization called Reading Time with the Queens, which is a drag story kind of adjacent program, but we're our own nonprofit. And we've been doing it there in various ways since 2017. And in February of this year, we were extremely protested. They kind of used a malicious compliance model to, get under our skin and really like scare people. Really just like get into a room, take up all the space so that nobody's able to feel safe, or especially no children were allowed to go to the program that was created for them, and to push us out of public spaces. And since then, we really haven't felt like we were safe enough to be at our public library. The thing about this, though, that I guess I just want to like make sure that I feel like there's a tendency to think about small towns and queerness in a way that's very like the amount of times I've been told, like, why don't you just move? It's not helpful to me. I went back and I am living in a smaller town than I grew up in because I feel safer there and I feel more connected to people there. I have a support system. We're all living in that same support system. And then just to have somebody who's like in a bigger town, even someone from like Salt Lake, just being like, oh, really, you should just move, as if like that's the thing that's going to fix the problem. It's a little demeaning. And I know that it's not the reality because my community came together in a way that I could never have imagined and made sure that we were safe for a good couple months. We started doing our program in a temple, and the Jewish community welcomed us. And we've moved on to other I don't want to use the word secular, less religious spaces since then. And you can, I don't know, my story is, I feel like, just like an example of ways that communities can come together in ways that you might not expect. And I just want to make sure that like people know that those things are happening in smaller towns. That's a thing that's going on, and people are coming together to make sure that everyone's safe, including queer people, including drag queens, and that we're creating the world that we want to live in ourselves.
I'm like, that would have been the perfect moment to just end. No, I think that was fabulous. And I think, you know, you brought up certain groups that came out to protest. And I know, you know, I mentioned earlier that we're sort of in a bubble here. But there was even last year a drag story hour in a public library in the Bay Area that had Proud Boys storm it. And, you know, and so I think it's everywhere. And I think, you know, when I do go back to Nampa Idaho, and I do, you know, I am out, I do a few gay friends there. And when I do get dolled up, it's like, you do feel that, you know, you do get the looks, you do get the people, but there's also so many people that are like so excited to be like, oh my God, it's a drag queen. I know, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like such celebrity.
Starved for drag.
I know.
Starved for drag. Even in Boise, where like most of the shows go on, you like walk around the city and everyone's like, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
They want it. They love it. They need it. They desire it. They reach out for it. Sexual tension.
Right. Exactly. That's a good drag. I wanted to touch base on, there was a video on your Instagram, and I think this is important because we're talking, you know, I talked about my higher power is love, and I think it's really hard to engage with people who are throwing hate and, you know, potentially physically violent and all of that. In a way that doesn't bring ourselves down. And I know there's a video where you were talking about how you engage in positivity and with love, you know.
Well, I think my thing right now is that, well, coming off of this experience of being protested in a place that I had in the past felt comfortable, I felt a lot of anger and hatred for people. I mean, this hate group is housed in a Baptist church in my community. And that's a community that I grew up in. And so I could see where they were coming from. I knew exactly, I've been there. I was that person. And I just wanted to punch him. And it wasn't healthy for me. And I realized at some point that anger that I'm feeling is not of God. It's not divine. It's not within me, actually. It's coming. It's something that is being placed onto me because that's the way that they want me to feel. They want me to feel exactly like they feel. And I think that if I let them make me feel the way that they want me to feel, then they have won. And I just want people to recognize that. I don't want people to be going into this next year of legislative turmoil where they're attacking drag, where they're certainly attacking women's rights, and they're attacking trans children's survival, and just get sunk into this place where you're angry all the time. I don't think that that's good for you, and I don't think that it's good for anybody in your community.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like a hug now. Linda, we've been talking a lot.
Yeah,
You've been able to say.
I'm just like everyone else, just like learning and hearing, to be honest. I mean, I don't really get to see this very much because I think I'm so stuck in my bubble, right? Like, I don't really get to hear stories like this. So it's just interesting, and I'm just trying to take it all in right now.
That's your motto.
Yeah, just trying to take it all in.
I know. I'm that queen.
That's a bigger name.
I want to know, I don't know if we feel like if anybody has anything in the audience here or online,
Yeah,
I don't know if they can
questions.
participate. They can have questions or thoughts or inputs, or want to take me to dinner.
I'll take you to dinner
Oh, you're paying.
with your credit card.
I just want to say, like, as somebody from like Idaho as well, from Boise, Idaho, and and I think Linda, you said something earlier about moving back to San Rafael to do drag, and I recently just moved back to Boise, Idaho, after living in San Francisco for a while and Chicago, and I don't know, I just feel, and I think you spoke to a lot, Callie, and I don't know if this is more of a comment than a question, but we should not have to leave home to be okay. And to be safe. And one of the big reasons why I moved back home was actually an act of gratitude. You know, I buried 13 friends in the 12 years I was gone who passed to suicide and drug overdose. And they were queer folk, you know, and I just feel so grateful that I was able to get out to a space in which I could find myself, much like you talked about, you know, coming to San Francisco was a big thing for me. I realized I was trans. I became a drag queen, you know, and, you know, a lot of things really happened. And so it's kind of cool to go back, but it is hard. It's really hard. What would you say, I guess, what would you say to people who are in small towns? Yeah, what kind of advice would you have for them?
I think you just gotta, there's no single answer to how to find that peace. For me, I can only speak from my own experience. It's really just been finding the community and staying connected. It's really been finding those groups. My church is one of those places for me. Not every single person there is queer, but they know who I am, they know what I do, and they love and accept me, and they support me, and they've made sure that I'm here today. And I think that that's, you know, people say power in numbers, but I feel like we are nobody if we're not our best friends. We're not lifting each other up at every opportunity that we have. So I would just say, find your people, make those connections. One of my friends always says, you know, because I would talk about that queer coffee that we have, or that support group. He always says, sometimes I don't want to go. Sometimes I don't want to talk to the people there. The people there are making me annoyed. They're making me angry. They're frustrating me. I don't agree with something they said. And I go anyways, because I know that if nobody is going, then I won't be there when we need it. So,
yeah. Well, what about maybe to go or to not stay? Would that be something you would encourage the other folks who have left?
I mean, I think it depends on your situation, you know. I think, you know, above all, it's finding community. You know, you have to find your community. And I think, you know, now, at least with social media, you know, that's, I hope, a little easier to do or to start finding that community. And I invite anybody here, anybody watching, to add us on social media. I guess when people register, they can look us up and have our socials on the, what is it, dragspirituality.com. But if you want, Kylie Minono, KYLIE, MINONO is all my socials. I'm not on TikTok. You know, and I think that's a good start. So I think it really depends on your situation. You know, for me, I knew, I felt so isolated and alone, and I didn't have access, or felt like I didn't have access. But I knew here that there was a gay community that I could easily tap into. I moved here and immediately joined the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus, which was a great, you know, way to come out and get to know myself. And I also had family here, so there was also that safety net. So for me, that was the right choice. I do think that, you know, in some of these smaller towns, not tiny, small, you know, there is community there. So I was excited to learn recently that even in Nampa, Idaho, I'm blanking on the name of this org, but there's a new nonprofit that's just starting up that provides a weekly meeting space for LGBTQ+ youth. So there are now starting to be more resources in so many places, you know. So I'd say just find your community, whether that's local, online, or whether you have to move to do it, but just find your community.
And I mean, I don't know, I feel like some of the advice that I would give to anyone who might not be so welcoming to us, if you decide to go back home, you know, is that, you know, sometimes we get to be the best friends of, you know, one of your family members. We get to be the mentors, teachers, educator, whatever it is, right? To whoever, to someone in your family. And I feel like one of the things that has held me back from moving back over there is that, first of all, it's expensive to like to be moving out, or like to find, or to kind of start all over, to be honest. It's scary. It really is scary, like to think that, oh wow, like I built a life over here, now now something's leading me over there. Like, how do I take that step and not feel like I made a mistake? Because what if it does become a mistake? But there's all those fears as well, like, you know, kind of knowing that like it might not even go well. But I don't know. That's just where I'm at right now, because I feel like, yeah, like that sounds real, you know.
I had a question, sort of reverse. Like, for those of us whose path did take us into a bigger city, that might have come from smaller places, or would like to support those of you holding it down, like you are, Kelly. Is there anything that you need? You know, you like, how do we support you doing what you're doing while we are, you know, living in the bigger cities, living in the place with larger communities? Maybe there's nothing you need from us, but I'm curious if there's a way that we could more respectfully relate to you who are living in the smaller town.
I think on a personal note, I just don't want to feel like written off. Like, there are still people in those communities. I live in one of those communities, and I know that, you know, Bonnie asked me to be here because she found something in me, and there's lots of different people in those communities that have as much to bring to the table. What's that bookstore down in the Castro? Fabulosa. I went in there, and as I was walking out, I forgot it. I was wearing my Protect Drag in Idaho pin, and the bookkeeper or the shopkeeper stopped me and said, "Oh, you're from Idaho. Do you know any organizations that we can send books to?" And like stuff like that, you know, you don't have to give us money, but like resources, sometimes things like that we just don't have. We live in a book desert in Pocatello. I have to drive 50 miles to my favorite bookstore for new books, and you know, I get them on bookshop.org because I'm not terrible. But resources like that, like those are the things that we need, especially in this era of book banning and stuff like that. You know, getting those resources in the hands of those community members is going to uplift them in a way that sometimes we just don't have access to.
Let me ask, you have that group, are they a nonprofit?
Reading Time with the Queen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Donation. I'm gonna say it for you, donation. You know, I mean, resources, I'm sure, absolutely, but it, you know, takes a lot to run an organization. So, you know, what's your link?
It's readingtimewiththequeens.com.
Reading
time. It's reading time.
Reading Queens, yes.
That's Reading Time with the Queen.
That's the shady version. Readingtimewiththequeens.com.
Yes.
I work in the nonprofit sector, so I'm used to .org for nonprofit.
Oh,
so
okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I couldn't get that .org for you.
I promise it's a legit website. No, but I think that was a great question, and I think, you know, like you said, books, resources, but also like just dollars. You know, organizations need dollars, and I think I would imagine too, if you have friends. And so I'm part of this group called Drag Out the Vote, which unites drag performers across the country to help register voters. I think, you know anybody in places, you know, Arizona is going to have a contentious race to replace, blanking on his name, but their terrible, allegedly liberal senator with a new senator. So they need, you know, support there. So I'd say like get people out involved with groups that help register voters, or join a group yourself and do phone banks, text banks, those sorts of things.
I also, just on the note of legislators, after you vote them in, even if you don't get the person that you wanted, it's still your job to put pressure on them. I don't care what state you live in. I don't care if you live in a town with amazing leadership or with absolutely atrocious leadership. There's stuff going on that you can give your opinion for all the time.
I just wanted to share, I'm come from a small town about 6 hours north from here. And the state of California, I applied for a grant and they gave me a $34,000 grant to run youth drag for 2 years. So in all the world, you know, of the states that are doing things that are hurtful and harmful, the state of California was like, take my money.
I love that.
And then the CAC director, actually, the California Arts Council director, randomly popped in during one of our meetings. He was like taking a tour up there. And I got to sit with him and talk to him about what we're really dealing with in a rural, you know, town. And he wanted to know. And so I just want to share that little blip of like hopefulness and glory.
I love that.
The grant went through California.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you. That's amazing. What's your name?
Noel or Tucker.
Tucker. Love that. There's a group called Queens of the Castro that does scholarships specifically for LGBTQ plus youth, and also do various drag workshops. So that's a resource that I would recommend reaching out to for your youth. They're based in San Francisco here. And if you need, you know, performers or other artists to pop up occasionally, we don't live that far.
Yeah.
I hope you're already booked.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions online?
Anyone online?
They're-
Are you there?
They're online, but they're not speaking to us.
Oh my God.
Shy.
Don't be shy. I put out.
So
Can I say that in church? Is that okay?
Can you tell us a little something you're looking forward to, or a project that you're working on that's around drag and spirituality?
Yeah, so for me, I'm working with, again, the Church of Fabulosity. And we're registering ministers. You don't have to do drag to register to become a minister. It's free. You just apply, give your information, and then you become ordained with the Church of Fabulosity. And really, you know, the goal with this organization is to spread across the United States as best we can, and then be able to, especially as things become more contentious, be able to show up as our fabulous selves and say that this is actually religious expression, and to challenge, you know, well, let's just say potentialities down the road, but also to just keep bringing joy to wherever we are. And that's the Church of Fabulosity. I think that one is .org.
They're a sponsor of the summit as well, so you can find their information on the website.
I'm getting ordained right now.
Welcome, brother. I shouldn't assume actually, as your sister, sibling, they, yeah. That's one thing that I find is so interesting, just really quickly, is that there's also all of these, you know, default behaviors. You know, for me growing up, even when I was working at the front desk of a hotel and would be greeting guests and writing, you know, welcome cards for people celebrating things, the number of cards that I just write up because I just automatically wrote Mr. and Mrs. Because that's just how I grew up. It's so interesting that I find myself, even now that I'm part of this community, having to try to constantly unlearn these habits. And yeah, I piss off people sometimes, not unintentionally, but you know, trying to always improve. And so I think that's important.
You had asked things that we're doing about dragon spirituality coming up. I find it very difficult sometimes to think past tomorrow. But so tonight we're in a drag show. I'm thinking a great deal about what I'm gonna, or I know what I'm singing, but like how I'm gonna sing it and whatever. I think I feel a great deal of responsibility this weekend to make sure that I am learning as much as I can and bringing back that knowledge to my community, especially knowing how much my church and my friends and my family have invested into me sitting right here in this moment. So I'm hoping that I can take a renewed sense back to whatever next project it is in Pocatello and really help the people there.
That's beautiful. I mean, for me, I feel like what I'm really looking forward to, it's something that I do. So Linda Summer is an act of like service and like forgiveness. I think there was a time when I felt like I was so ashamed for having feminine tendencies, for wanting to wear crop tops or whatever it is, putting some glitter on my, whatever it was, right? And I feel like Linda Summers now gets to sort of live and enjoy all of that, right? And I have to thank those who sort of helped me, get to that point, Bonnie Biden being one of them, right? And I feel like there's a show called, a fundraiser called Clown Fucker. It's produced and ran by the Sisters of the Perpetual Indulgence, such a big word. And they do this once a month where we raise money to help youth, LGBTQ youth with some money to buy clothing that fits their, that will fit, for their ideal image or whatever. And I think that's really important because I feel like not only are we elevating their voices, right, but we're also helping them find spirituality in that, because I think that's really important. So I think it's every third week of the month, but yeah, Clown Fucker by the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, everyone.
If you wanted to say goodbye, any sort of goodbye messages in right about an hour or so.
Well,
Oh wow.
thank you so much for being here and listening to us talk about living in a small town, especially you Idahoans. If there's any Idahoans out there, I'm gonna have some things to say to you
Idaho.
later. Also, I guess on an ending note, the fries here are just not as good as back home. Just know that. If you're going into potato territory, maybe just take a step back and a salad. That's one thing I've learned. I'm bringing it back to you.
When in Idaho, fries over salad. You heard it here.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody here today, everybody online, and thank you so much for having me here. I think a lot about where we are in this country, in the world, and I think what gives me hope and what gives me confidence in the work that I'm doing is just knowing that the tide is turning and younger generations are, continuing to be more progressive. Gen Z, I read in Gallup that 1 in 5 identify as LGBTQ+. And so even when things seem as dark as they do right now across this country and in other parts of the world, I truly believe that down the road, things will reverse, things will get better, and love will win. And so that, I think, I look to the future and I look to our youth to carry on the work that we're doing and progress that message of love.
Yeah. And pick up your phones for crying out loud.
There we go.
No, I'm kidding. No, I mean, the only thing I can say is I feel like it is such a privilege to be living in a city, not living in a town anymore. But I think what has also been amazing is that by coming to a city, I've been learning so much and I have gained so many skills. And I feel like this is just preparing me for my next chapter of my life. And I feel like I'm so excited. And so for those who are still living in towns, try to see if you can join some sort of organization and try to gain some skills with that and build community. So maybe you can pass it along so freely. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful